Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to get started. This session is Drupal AI and Canvas, a marketer's dream CMS. Hi, I'm Aiden. I run a digital agency that focuses on UX research for building AI-enabled B2B and higher ed websites. I also run the AI Toronto Drupal group. If you can check us out on meetup.com, we have in-person and virtual meetings alternating every month. And so I'd love to have you join, even if you're not in the Toronto area. Please join in remotely. And we do about half Drupalish stuff and half just straight AI dev stuff. So it's a lot of fun because we're getting a bunch of new non-Drupal folks into the room and then introducing them to Drupal as an awesome AI solution. I also am very happy to announce that Foster Interactive has become part of the Drupal AI Makers. This is an initiative organized through the Drupal Association, where there's currently 22 different agencies who have all committed either a half-time person or a full-time person from their team for 6 months and a bunch of dollars to all work together to make Drupal a first-class open source AI tool. And realistically, we're up against like big companies with deep pockets. And so this initiative is working to coordinate the efforts of all these different teams with a single unified product vision. And so what you see today and some of this work that we look at is a direct result of that collaboration. So I was part of the team that worked on the Dries Note demos. Just a show of hands from everyone here, who has seen the Dries Note? Just curious. So roughly half the crowd. Martin, yes, I'm sure he's seen it. And I just want to say that with the Dries Note, when you watch it, it really looks like the robots are doing all this amazing work. And that is sort of true, but really the AI is acting as a remarkable assistant. But the actual reason that the output is good is the human work, the brainstorming, the user research, and the workshops that gets encoded and saved into the system. And that's why that it's able to make such a useful and interesting output. So if you leave today's talk with just one thing, I'd like you to remember that you need to focus on people first, or else you're going to get AI slop. So today's talk, we're going to run through a couple new features that'll enable this AI page building process, run through that marketer's use case for why this tool is interesting, take a look at what's under the hood to make it all happen, and then talk about what we need to get good output. So the new features, it's really exciting. Drupal's got a bunch of really cool new features that make AI-enabled powered page building possible. And so the first one is site templates, Drupal Canvas, AI Context Control Center, and AI Autonomous Agents. So we'll take a look at these in detail. Site templates is a way where you can install Drupal, and this comes with Drupal CMS 2. If you check out the beta right now, it'll come installed with what's called the Mercury design theme. And what we're looking at here is a theme, a bunch of components, a bunch of configuration that comes out of the box to give you content you can see and interact with out of the box when you first install Drupal. So instead of our Bartik theme, like whatever empty Drupal website that's come forever, you can have an example that looks like a real website for your particular use case. And there's in the works sort of a marketplace where you can shop around for a good starting website that's most appropriate for your organization. So really what that does is provide a component-based design system under the hood. And so that's included in this case. What we're looking at is the Mercury design system. Pre-installed feature bundles that are powered by Drupal recipes, so you get functionality like news, content, that kind of thing, and demo content so you can actually get started fast. The next feature that is really cool that's coming out that makes this possible is called the Canvas editor. This was formerly called Experience Builder, but there's lawsuit stuff that made the name change. And what this is a live editor, a little a la Gutenberg inside of WordPress, where you can easily edit your text. It live updates. You can drag and drop the components. On the left there is a structured component library system where you can just drag your components into the UI, drag and drop to reorder. In this example, I'm like, hey, let's get rid of one of those testimonials, and then reflow the grid to be 3 columns. So it's a really excellent editing experience. It has multiple undos, so you can tab back through your undo steps as you get into there, and then you can just quickly publish. So I'm really excited about this. It's all built in React. Somehow the clever folks who have worked on this figured out how to get Drupal's single directory components into React, and so that those existing themes and systems will just kind of work in Drupal out of the box. The next really cool feature is called the AI Context Control Center. This is brand new prototype business. And what this is you can load in documents. And in this case, we're talking feature benefits and product benefits, content strategy type documents, and user interface rules that your AI systems inside of Drupal can understand this as context, and then you can add it so that when you're doing something with design, it goes and loads the context for design goals inside of your website. So let's talk about how these pieces come together and really benefit a marketer. AI really supports that marketer's use case. And we work with a lot of different B2B and higher ed teams, which are really quite different teams, but the marketing groups at these types of organizations really do have a common set of problems. Generally, they have a ton of responsibilities, so they're creating newsletters, doing website updates, maybe running pay-per-click campaigns, running events, and. The number of tasks these teams need to do is crazy. Because they have all these tasks, the teams are often a little small for what they're actually accomplishing. Sometimes 1 to 3 people, and no matter what they do, no one can be good at everything. So they're sort of doing some core activities that they focus on, and they're still doing other activities that are probably outside of their core skills. And because of this, they are short on time, and because they're working to really tight deadlines. And under these kinds of scenarios, it is super common to see it be very difficult for the teams to keep everything up to date and juggle all these different tasks. So for the Dries Note, we needed to come together to make a realistic scenario that addressed realistic problems for our target marketer audience. And so we ended up coming up with the idea of using a fictitious company called FinDrop, which is based off of a virtual credit card company. There are a bunch out there that do this. And basically the benefit of the product, if you use these kinds of things, is that you can set up virtual credit cards for large teams, and then all the accounting and transactions and mapping gets sort of automatically managed on the back end, auto-tagged, and becomes very organized. And because the Mercury theme was already in development, we kind of had to pick a brand story that worked with that existing theme, which definitely has this sort of dark mode look to it. And so we did some, a little quick research on imagining what, by referencing the real competitive businesses might look like, so we could map out user experience goals, audiences that those audiences would benefit from, and start putting together some visual identity brand elements that reflect these concepts. So this is all created in Gemini Flash 2.5 image generation, commonly known as Nano Banana, which is their code word for it. And basically, this idea of like chaos and data going into the app and coming out ordered was sort of a visual idea that we rendered for this. And it aligns with that dark mode kind of techie feel that comes out of the theme itself. And so from that, we were like, what are the benefits of this product? And generated some imagery to reflect that. So maybe you could spin up your virtual credit cards in seconds and make tons of them. So the first image on the left, maybe it integrates with a ton of different platforms. And then on the right, we have, it's a very common marketer use case where you make a value download of some kind, like a white paper with research data on it that ultimately points to the value of using your product or service. So it mapped all this stuff out. Again, all done with Nano Banana. So by the time we're done that, we've got some cool graphics, it looks realistic, but it also feels really heavy and dark, like a little too heavy and dark. And so the last step to sort of add into the mix, again, another sort of realistic scenario for an organization like this, is I put together a photo shoot of a model, you know, Cindy Liu, we had to name her, for this, and using the app in different contexts around the world to show visually what an example of, you know, using this product in different places around the world, you know, show how it's helpful. I got to say, I'm super impressed with Nano Banana that they can hammer this out. Any LLM like image generation before, they've been able to make good images, but what I've never been able to do is make good images consistently with like, you know, a virtual model, so to speak, where it looks like the same person in different contexts and scenarios. I had a hard time getting the watch on the left arm consistently, like that kind of stuff comes up, so there were some quirks, but I'm super impressed with how this managed to work out. You know, I mocked up a UI and said, put it on the phone in the photo. So it was really cool how this was all put together. And all of that was done in a day or two. So that's just crazy that, that's possible now. So all these pieces come in to make what looks like a realistic sort of demo for that Dries Note. And the key scenario that we're working on that's actually addressed in the video is that we have this idea where a company like this would be running pay-per-click campaigns in LinkedIn. And when you run a pay-per-click campaign, there's different parts of the engagement with potential customers that you'd be interested in. So we call it like top of funnel, where you're just trying to get people aware of you. And that might be you want to get that person to download a report. Then you could talk middle of funnel, where someone's aware of you, but now you want to start engaging with them more frequently. So that would be getting someone to attend, to register for a virtual event. And then finally, bottom of the funnel, someone's kind of ready to buy and you want to sell to them directly. And we want to have an ad drive to someone to actually booking a demo. So when we make all these ads in a realistic scenario, you need to make the matching landing pages so that when you click on an ad, you know, whatever engaged that person is immediately continued into the landing page where we want to get them to convert, ultimately fill out a form and do some action with us. So this process of creating landing pages that match ad campaigns is at least hours of work, but more likely days, because you have to write out all the copy, get the imagery together, figure out a concept. Maybe you have to get your developers involved to help actually build out the pages. So the workflow that we're looking at today is going to address this particular scenario by using the AI page building that we'll look at today based off of the prototype that was shown in the Dries Note. So that workflow starts where you prompt Canvas using you know, the prompt to Canvas AI. That then loads a bunch of rules from the AI Context Control Center. Those rules and systems look at your existing component library, and again, this one's called Mercury. Then for certain components that need it, such as images and cards, it goes and looks at your image library and picks appropriate images, and that is how it makes the event registration page. So let's look at it in action. So this is Canvas. I'm going in and pressing add a new page. I'm going to sort of name the page here. So this is our event registration. Now I'm opening the AI tool, and you can also switch to desktop view, which I kind of like that view. And now I put in a prompt here which just says, it's really simple. Make an ad, use our existing page structure rules, and please include images of Cindy Liu, our virtual model. And then at the bottom is all that's pasted in is the copy from the ad. And so what it's doing now, I cut out about a minute of it thinking in this video, and now it's building the components along to the content strategy, pulling facts that are coming from our fact document that's in the Context Control Center, you know, outlining who should attend, putting a call to action block at the bottom, picking a form and embedding it in the page, and loading in all the matching content. So that's real time. As I said, I cut out a minute of it thinking before that started running. And so this is the output, which is a pretty darn solid page from that run. So for this use case, it would be a huge benefit to our target audience, a target audience person in there. And so we can look at, we need to make 3 landing pages. So we've got 3 different prompts that go in to do that. This is book a demo, and it's just straight up like, make a page. Here's the copy from the ad. So this one's a little loose, and so it's picked, a stress-based image. It's a pain point-based title, which is noted in the content strategy document, like dig into pain to see if we can get someone to sign up and book a demo. And now it's mapped out a sort of different set of components. Like there are some that are similar. Now it's introduced this new like blue text box element as well. And so it does a really quite remarkable job of getting this all together. But you notice there's some elements of this design that aren't perfect. So like blue text on blue background, so I've gone in and cleaned that up. There's another one, and a second example of blue text on a blue background inside of here, and then that should be centered. So these are sort of examples of little misses on there, but still, overall really solid output. And here's the third example. And again, I'm cutting 30 seconds to 1 minute out of these videos for processing. Everything else is real time. This one is for that value download, and I had to add in some text into the prompt to say, hey, here are the chapters of stuff that's in the download, so that it would, hopefully encourage you to download and read it. And again, the build process is quick, and it's done a really good job with that. And in this case, it's now done another what I'd call a mistake. That like blue background at the bottom there, I don't love. That's a design preference. It's not an accessibility like bug like the last one, but that just needs to be cleaned up. And again, because Canvas is such a good editor, it's like super easy. So yeah, the text needs to be centered. And then this sort of blue region here, I'm opening up the like editor tool so you can find all the layers. You pick the layout section that it's inside, set the background to none. So workflow-wise, this is awesome fast, and really, it's amazing to me that we can get this kind of output in a realistic, functioning code. So out of 5 runs, I ran many runs of this, but I'd say on average, out of every 5, 1 will fail, 3 need tuning, and 1 is excellent. So the last 2 examples where I went and fixed a couple things, I think if I was actually going to launch that live, I'd also clean up some of the title copy a little bit and jam on that a bit. But that is a really good ratio, and this is a totally experimental prototype. So it's only going to get better from here with more iterations and work. And that total render time of 1 to 2 minutes on average. But a realistic scenario, again, that comes up, say we've done our work, we've got our nice landing pages, and then like on the team Slack, you get a message from the sales team, 80% time savings. That was like a big pitch in the headlines. That's last year's numbers. It's 90% savings that we use now. So you'd be like, great, now I need to go back, and this is just 3 pages, but I could imagine there being more. I gotta find them, I gotta fix them, and work on all that. And this is where the autonomous agents element comes in. That's super cool. So I'm going into the AI context center and going into the key facts document, of which that 80% time savings is mapped out, and I've changed it to 90%. I'm saving it, and this is a background task. So now I've got to go and run cron, but you could imagine time is passed on your website, because cron probably get triggered every once in a while, so that tells the autonomous agent to go into the background, and it's noticed that there is a change on a key fact. It's read through all the pages in the website, it's looked for instances of that key fact, and it's authored an unpublished draft of all those pages, and it's just leaving it there in the background for you to review and publish at your leisure. So we can see the example is now updated to 90% in there, and on this one, reduce expense time by 90% with virtual cards. So you can see, imagine how powerful that would be once we can get it at scale, right? Right now it's checking every page and running it through AI, which would be pretty expensive, so there's some refinements that will definitely be needed for that to be practical in the future on a website with thousands of pages on it. But this is a real problem, like keeping your content like factually accurate. And you don't see it in this version, but there was other versions where it would render stuff and it would write out 80% in Word somewhere. I can't remember where it did it, but it would find that and change that as well, because it's using AI to understand the context of the content on the page. So let's take a look at what's under the hood. And this is an installable demo that's available right now. It's on GitHub on the Freely Give, which is one of the sort of founding organizations of the AI initiative. And you can go and download that demo yourself. If you want the link, it's on the description from the talk as well. That I put at the end of the session talk as well. So what is in the prototype is a dev version of Drupal CMS 2 with the Mercury theme installed. This includes Canvas with many, many patches in there. And so because what we want is an installable experience out of the box, we've like frozen and locked many of the versions of things so that nothing exciting occurs when you run it. This also, you run this in DDEV, and it also includes a vector database that's for media. So what's really cool is when you install it, we actually put in like 200 photos into it, in addition to the ones I showed you earlier. Those are the ones we wanted the AI to pick, because those are the good ones for our media, but everyone's realistic scenarios, you know, no one's got a like well-organized, properly tagged media library in a website that's been running any length of time. They tend to be very chaotic and have tons of images inside of there. So we wanted to simulate that as well by including sort of similar and appropriate images for hypothetically, but not the ones we wanted the AI to pick. And then it includes a number of the AI suite modules with some alpha modules installed in there. And basically everything's running with GPT, OpenAI's GPT 4.1 for most of the actions it does in the background. So when you go to install it, you need to, a couple things to note is like you definitely have to be comfortable in DDEV, and you need an Open API key tier 4, which is a pretty significant barrier. It means you've put $250 into Open API credits over the history of the account, and the account is more than 2 weeks old. And it's actually not like, it's not super expensive to run this stuff. I probably burnt like $5 or $10 in my most intense days of playing around getting this to work. But what you do need is the rate limiting that comes from the higher tiers. When that's building that page, it is doing a ton of calls to OpenAI, multiple calls front and responding and then initiating new ones. So you just need that throughput limit that comes with tier 4. And when you do install it, expect some warnings. This is normal and part of the process. And to generate, when it gets installed, it actually passes all 200 images to a generator that describes them using AI, so that takes a few minutes to run. Maybe expect this to be a 5 or 10 minute install. So let's take a look at what the output of that AI image generation is. And so in this library, this is what comes out of the box, so the 200 images are in there. And this is the kind of thing the AI generates. And what we needed to do is take that base description and just add in a little note saying, this is our model Cindy Liu from our photo shoot. We needed to add that to the end, because realistically, if you're going to do a photo shoot and like upload your media, you would have that properly tagged in your media library so you can go and find it later. We can see that, those were the examples that we produced for this demo, but it works equally well with the many other images that are in there. And so it's using that and sort of vectorized the description of those images so that the AI can, look up appropriate images quickly and use those in the composition. So underneath the hood, how the agent flow functions is it starts with a user prompt, and that triggers what's called the AI orchestration agent inside of Canvas. This agent's job is to figure out and delegate the work that you've requested in the prompt. And in this example, that's sending the vast majority of the page building responsibility to the Drupal Canvas page builder agent. And then that agent is interacting with the context control rules that we've written, where it's going and looking at a bunch of rules that are baked into the component library to decide which components it should place on the page. And then it's also doing lookups from media. And all of these things interacting in many back and forth conversations between our agents results in it rendering the page. So to get deeper in understanding how this works, there's a module called AI logging, which is really helpful to install. So you can imagine each little interaction, never mind what we prompted, but the agent is busy prompting other agents, and that can be really tricky to figure out what the heck's going on when it doesn't go right. And so there is a module called AI logging, which basically makes a record for every interaction between the agents themselves, so you can figure out what's going on after the fact. There was some talk after DrupalCon where that might get deprecated in favor of a different module called observability, but again, has the same goal of tracking all this so that you can debug it. But as we get AI tools integrated into our website, it is super important that we have this kind of tracking for responsible AI usage and governance. So you can record, if something strange happens, you can record what happened and why something strange happened once you have these kinds of records. So there are a number of limitations. This is a prototype demo, right? So the first big limitation that's in there is it only currently works on a blank page. So it doesn't have the tools in it to like read what's there and start modifying what's in there, but that's totally in the issue queue and just because we needed to get the prototype together. So that will be resolved soon where you'd be like, can you please make all the titles on the page title case? Something like that should be doable where you ask it to make broad changes across your Canvas elements, or you could click on something and say, do something to this element. It should also be possible as well. There is locked versions of Canvas and Mercury to make sure, as I mentioned, that this thing actually installs and functions out of the box. So there's all kinds of cool things in the last like 1 week, and there's going to be even more that have been added to those projects, which you will not see in the prototype. And then that OpenAI Tier 4 account is a pretty significant barrier. So that is also in general a challenge that the AI initiative groups is working on, trying to figure out ways to lower the barrier to get in the door with trying out these things on your systems. And again, it's just, it needs a lot of calls to be able to do something like that. And so we're working on solutions to find alternatives maybe to OpenAI itself. So the roadmap in general, the big picture of what's happening in the Drupal CMS tied into AI is there is a target for the CMS version 2 release, which is all about Canvas. Like that's the focus of the release. And that's being targeted for January 2026. Maybe for Drupal's 25th birthday. This would be the aggressive but possible goal that's being sought. The AI module suite, which is running all the cool stuff underneath the hood that you're seeing, is going through a major refactor as well. And currently there's a whole bunch of modules bundled into the core suite. Those are going to get pulled out into their own discrete submodules. And so that'll make things easier for everyone to maintain. And then there is also a big emphasis on improving the user experience and easier setup. So Drupal's always been great at making tools for developers. So essentially it's developers making tools for developers, which is, we've got a really awesome architecture, but the barrier to get started for someone who's a marketing person is impossible to overcome. So we need to figure out ways to get sites installed like with few clicks. And you don't need very difficult to get API keys from OpenAI to get started to play. We need to make sure that this is easier to use and easier to set up. So let's talk a little bit about how to get good output. And in this case, context is everything. If you run the exact same prompts I put into those examples without having the context control center documents in the background, it ends up making like really ugly layouts, randomly somewhat, and the copy it writes is just full of hallucinations, or very often it actually refuses to do anything and sort of says like, hey, let's work on what this content should be, and then I'll go and build it. And because we don't have the editing flow set up for an existing page, that workflow doesn't work right now. So, you know, it's really basic. Garbage in, garbage out. And in the case of an AI-enabled tool, that means you don't add in any context to help the AI write useful, meaningful content. It means you're going to get AI slop out. So randomly generated, generic. If it's GPT, it likes to be, oh, great idea, you know, like kind of content, which is not helpful for the use cases that we have. So what are the contexts that go into this system to make sure that it can be used and be effective? The first is that component-based design system itself. Each component itself has little text rules about what it is and how it should be used. The context control center documents, we'll look at 2 of them in detail today, but like something about value proposition to pull actual factual information, fictional information about our product out. UI rules, general approaches on how we like to structure user interface elements. And then finally, content strategy. So a detailed document saying, what is a good landing page? How should it be structured? And basically, the context documents themselves, it's operating similar to how many RAG-based AI tools do, which you ask them to do something, and then it goes and finds some content, and literally copies and pastes it to the top of the prompt or beneath it in your request. So essentially, that's all it's doing under the hood, but you're just making sure it understands your rules when it's doing critical operations. The final place where you can get context into your agent is the document media library itself. So this is really cool. So your PDFs that all get uploaded also get vectorized and encoded in a way where it's easy to search for relevant content related to what you're working on. So then you can pull in information such as like a brand guideline or whatever, if that's in PDF. You can just like attach that into your media library and ask your prompt it to be able to go and look at the rules in there when it's considering making an element of the page. That is not in this demo, but it functions in this demo. Just didn't have time to get, you know, a fake brand guideline put together for the Dries Note to sort of demo that. So component descriptions, that first part is if you go into the AI section, we've got our component description settings, and these are all single directory components. And these are the cool building blocks that come with Mercury out of the box. And this is a card element, and so we describe what the cards are. And in this case, it's kind of sort of got a special rule, which says like, don't use cards as a standalone component. They should always be pasted inside of a grid, because if you put a card by itself, it becomes gigantic and looks weird on the page. Now the AI Context Control Center, which we, you know, at the beginning of the talk sort of highlighted here, again, just to sort of recap what's in here, key facts and value proposition document, landing page funnel rules, like what is a good landing page, and those general UI design system rules. And again, if you write these, you can just like add them in like content. They're all formatted in Markdown. But when you do, these are all the different Drupal agents. So you have to make sure you attach your context to the specific Drupal agents you need. And in this case, it's the Canvas template builder. And let's take a look at what's in those documents. So again, this is just a Markdown file. I use a tool called Typora, which is a nice Markdown editor on the Mac. And this is the actual document itself. We highlight sections that outline core benefits from the perspective of our audience. We outline some key product features and maybe facts we could brag about on our product. Includes some information about target audiences. It includes a quote and some notes on tone and language. In truth, compared to what we do with our client work, this document is super light, but for the purposes of a demo, it worked well. The next document is the landing page structure document. This is way more detailed and heavy than the last one. Basically at the top, there is a rule that gets mapped out that says, hey, Your first job, LLM, is to figure out which of the 3 types of landing pages you are working on, top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, because there's different rules about how you should craft those different kinds of landing pages. And so that sort of maps out, and then inside of that is a section that says, this is what makes a good book a demo landing page. But you will note that this includes some very detailed descriptions of what the page should be, including like, padding should be 96. There is a bug in the existing instance of this tool where the AI agent can only see or read the component's rendered values. So if you go into Canvas and you say, pick a padding and it says use padding large, that's what would be the intuitive way to describe, hey, I want a landing page, use padding large in this grid because it looks nice. Temporarily, we have to say use padding value 64, which is whatever in the back end renders the actual CSS classes on everything. So that's just a temporary issue that'll get resolved soon. So looking at this kind of work and as part of the AI Makers group, like what my organization is going to be focusing on next is exploring reducing the detail in that content strategy document. I think that's like super verbose and like not super realistic for folks to be able to produce that kind of document. It's almost like a new technical skill, which is what we're trying to avoid. We want plain, simple language about what's in there. So we'll do iterative experiments to like reduce the level of detail in the document until we get it to the point where it starts producing poor content, and then we can take it back a step. I also want to definitely test different LLM models. All of this stuff is working on GPT, OpenAI GPT 4.1, which is like a reliable, pretty fast, pretty cheap model, but it's also super boring. And so like its writing style is just straight up boring. And so other LLM models outside of, the AI tools we're using in the rest of our agency practice, like we never touch OpenAI's models anymore. We're using other stuff. So I imagine that the value we're getting in like coding or workflow sort of processes in other practices will probably also benefit inside of the Drupal Canvas experience. And then we want to expand on our real use cases. As I had mentioned, that was like a very limited sort of value proposition approach document. So we want to start layering in realistic scenarios from real clients and see, where the thresholds are and what we need to do to like balance out those agents and organize our context documents to still be really effective. So you might be asking yourself, like, how do I create those quality guidelines so that the Drupal AI system will work well? And some of those documents you should be considering thinking about creating is like audience personas and value propositions, tone and language guidelines, so tell your page how to craft the words that are rendered on the page. Page level content strategy, so maybe in the case of the landing pages, like we want to open with the hero, we want to put the value stuff in the middle, we want to close with the call to action. You need to define that for all the different kinds of content that you could load into your website that you'd want to have this AI assisted workflow. And then finally down to the design system level, right? You've got all your bespoke components, different elements that you can use to build out a page. You need to think about how one could make rules and document how each component should be used on its own. For example, if you do cards, you might say, hey, I want the title to make sure it's like, 30 characters or less. And then maybe if we have cards and they go in a grid, like all the cards should have the same size image in them, or they should all have no image in them, so that they're consistent in the layout as you look at the page. So how do we get to this, right? We start off by gathering a team of smart people. That's like the core. And then we need to do real audience user interviews. We need to understand what our audience's problems actually are and what pain points they have. And we need to challenge our own assumptions because our smart team of people probably has a good grasp of what our audience needs. We have our own assumptions, and there's always surprises that come out in user testing to help refine and prioritize our approach. Once we've done that, and based on the research, we can then workshop our brand strategy and position. You're probably starting from somewhere, but it needs to evolve. You need to have the level of detail to map out all of this stuff that your team probably intuitively knows when they write something. They're like thinking about that pain point of that audience. But we're gonna need to write it down and document it and agree on it, or else we can't load it in the system. If we don't load it in the system, OpenAI is gonna decide what the pain point is rather than your actual audience. Once we've got that strategy and positioning together, then we can create our design system and content strategy and put together ideas of how we structure a page where we communicate our value propositions from the strategy work in such a way that our audience will be receptive to it. And then we need to test what we've built, because it's, there's always refinements and improvements that can be done. And so, when we do all these activities, and it's very collaborative and it's very people-driven, we end up having the human insight as the core of our work product. And everything that we're doing revolves around this insight. And what we get from that is that our work ends up being authentic and distinct amongst a growing world of AI slop. And the folks who do not put in this effort are going to just do the easy path. And as the tools get easier to use and more accessible, what starts us as a trickle of AI slop is quickly going to turn into a flood. And so successful organizations who are going to battle this are going to be the ones who double down on research and human insight to be distinct in the marketplace out of the sea of identical looking repetitive content. So I want to leave you with two closing thoughts for today. The first is to, now is the time to unlearn what you think is possible. AI is really shaking things up. And my own assumptions about what's possible kind of like held me back from the work that you just saw. Like the fact that you get output like that, that's that good. 3 months ago, I would have said it's not possible, or it's a year in the future, or 2 years in the future. Also doing that work with Nano Banana to like hammer out those images, and like, it was fun, right? To have a limited budget client that never said no to me, but like, it was fun to work on that kind of work. But to be able to hammer that out in a day or two, again, it's just fantastic and amazing that this is even possible. But while we have those opportunities, we need to remember that the human insight stuff cannot be outsourced to AI. We're entering a world where basically everything we're going to see and look at is fake and generated. And so it is becoming more important than ever that real, authentic, that human core becomes the center of our work, which is AI enhanced, not the other way around. So thank you very much, everyone. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And thank you. If you have any questions, let me know. Yes, yeah.
So one question, you were talking about using OpenAI's model. Is
Yeah.
that because it is both a video and text model, or that you're stuck on that one?
So the question is, was, we're using OpenAI's models. Was that because it's a multimodal text and image model? The answer is the platform, the Drupal AI platform, is designed to be model agnostic. And so that's just one of the connectors that are available. And historically, we've used OpenAI because it kind of was the first one that worked. And there's like a momentum of history going on there. So initially, we started this project where all this OpenAI work was done when OpenAI 4.0 was kind of the hot new model. And it was still the default. And it didn't do a great job for this. This was like overloading its context window inside of there. So no, we're not stuck on OpenAI. We do need to do a sort of, this is putting a significant increase in the number of calls and loads to those APIs. So like rate limits and the output from them. We need to experiment to see which models work well for this kind of scenario and where those limits are. But yeah, I'm thinking Claude is probably if I had to bet on what my favorite model will be in a couple months, it's probably going to be Claude. Maybe Gemini, but probably
does
Claude.
it need to be multimodal?
Some of that activity. So you could delegate the agents that are like looking at the images, they need to be multimodal, but you don't have to use one agent for all of the different activities. So some models need to be, anything related to image needs to be an image model. It's also doing like vector embeddings, which is a different model inside of here as well. So yeah, we'll have the choice, and there's a ton of folks who are very interested in obviously getting the open source models all up and running. But for now, the goal is just to get good output and stick with what we know, get good output, and then we can explore from there. Yeah?
You mentioned that out of 5 runs, 1 had failed, 3 were mediocre, and 1 was quite good. I just wanted to clarify, that was with all the same identical context and prompts to start with.
Yeah, and I would say the 3 are pretty good. Like, so those 2 examples where I had to correct something, that's what I consider medium. And if I need to not touch it at all, that's what I consider good. So I've got a fairly high bar in that rating. There's a question at the back? Huh?
Thank you for this, by the way.
You're welcome.
My question kind of probably builds off of what was just being asked, but this is the first time I've seen Drupal CMS 2 demoed this way. And when Drupal CMS 1 was shown off at whatever DrupalCon that was, during the AI configuration process, there was an opportunity to choose from a number of different LLM options.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm curious about is, do you perceive the work that's being done right now as trying to narrow in on whether it's GPT or Claude or something else to kind of find a clear winner and centralize on it? Or is the intention in Drupal CMS 2 and beyond to continue to offer like that list of options for the user to theoretically choose between?
So to repeat the question, is the AI initiative trying to focus on fewer good models that get great results, or is the initiative more focused on providing many different options, like the buffet of AI integrations that is out there? The initiative is absolutely focused on the buffet of options. I am focused on finding the right model that gets good results for this kind of work scenario. And that's what's kind of cool, right? Like the initiative, there's a bunch of different organizations coming together that have a little bit of different focus, but we're all moving towards that same product vision of an excellent install experience. And so, a lot of the folks, there are a lot of European-based folks who are like dead set against running OpenAI because of the data residency issues. So from my point of view, we get it to work with whatever tool first, and then we can expand it out into the other platforms after. Any other questions? Yeah.
So when you used AI to build the page, and then you went in and manually made changes to it to fix it.
Yeah.
Is that your standard way to manually fix it afterwards, or do you use AI again to fix it?
So the question is, do we use, the human fixes the AI-generated page, or would you use AI to fix the AI-generated page? I would say both would be the appropriate workflow. That little tuning at the end where you're like, let's get the titles right, like that's always going to be faster and easier to just go ahead and do it yourself. But what we saw there where it was making blue text on a blue background, that's actually needs to be going fixed in the context prompt. It'd be like, never put blue text on a blue background, should be added to that prompt, and then it would probably stop doing that in the future. So there's a little bit of like both, like update your guidelines, get the ad published and out, then update your guidelines. If there was a run where I really wanted to like AI to fix a lot of stuff on a page that was just generated, I'd probably delete it and start fresh. But if you have existing content where you're like, hey, this instance of this product's name has changed in 30 places on the page, and you don't want to run that example with the agent in the background, that'd be a great place where you like find out instances of it and like update, it's now called, FinDrop version 2, or whatever, and update the page for you. So that'd be a good AI use case for editing something that's already there. Perfect.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.